want to welcome everyone for being here and celebrating this fabulous evening with all of us. I want to give a big welcome to Stephanie Urchick, our Rotary International President-elect, who is in the house. All right, Stephanie. We are so honored to have you here, so thank you so much. And we're also just as honored to have her nephew, Steven, here. Come on, Steven. And his partner, Stephanie. And we also have Stephanie Phillips here, so if you just yell Stephanie tonight, if you need something, someone is sure to answer. So that is great. I also want to welcome Celeste Herbert, who is here, who is our Major Gifts Officer from the Foundation. Thank you, Celeste, for being here. And I also want to introduce one of my classmates, our district governor from Northern Connecticut and also Western Massachusetts, Christine Burns, otherwise known as the other Christine. So thank you, other Christine, for being here and supporting us. So I just want to start off with a quick quote before we get started from Albert Einstein. He said, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding." And I agree with that. And I'm thinking maybe if I agree with Albert Einstein, I might just be as brilliant as he is, maybe. But that is why we're here tonight. And that is what Rotary does. It is peace through understanding. And I am so happy for our district and many other districts around the world who are already participating in promoting peace. Here in our district, we are helping Syrian refugees right here in New Haven, right here in our backyard, to live better lives. Through our youth exchange program, we are bridging cultures. Our young adults are learning about different cultures, understanding them, and appreciating them. That builds global citizenship and peace around the world. We are also helping women leave their homes from domestic violence. We as Rotarians in our district are setting up libraries and safe homes, as well as giving them through our district grants and other fundraising efforts, diapers, formula, baby clothes, so they can start all over again. And also, through our global grant program, we give out scholarships to graduate students who are going to pursue careers in peace and global studies. And we have an alumni from our program, and I know she is going to be the next Secretary of the UN. No pressure. But I start with that because when you start peace locally in the communities, that's creating change and has a global effect around the world. So I want to thank you as Rotarians for the impact that you have as peace builders. And I hope this evening you'll be inspired and you'll strengthen that commitment to continue being not only Rotarians, but peace builders locally and globally. So thank you for being here tonight. We're going to start with dinner, and we will start our program at 7:30 with our great panelists. We'll have Robert Friend give a further introduction of our panelists that are here with us this evening. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Robert Friend. I am the District Governor-elect for District 7980, and I have the honor of serving as District Governor during the year that Stephanie Urchick will be Rotary International President. So I cannot be more thrilled. I want to take a moment and introduce a few people that are important to our community. First of all, our District Governor track First of all, big round of applause for Christine Friedman, our district governor. And our district governor nominee, Stephanie Phillips. Where are you, Stephanie? And Don Wetmore, our district governor nominee designate. Don Wetmore. We have a very tight district governor track, and we work very closely together. And this journey we've been on that brings us here tonight has been a journey of love and compassion. And so really great to be here. I also want to recognize the past district governors. I'm not going to name you by name. You know who you are. Please stand up. And in particular, besides the ones from District 7980, we have Marty Schulman from District 7230 up. You'll meet another past district governor from 7230 who's also here momentarily. That's Mary Shackleton. But we're thrilled you all came up from New York. And then, of course, Christine Burns, who's current district governor up in District 7890, Northern Connecticut and Western Mass. So we're thrilled they're all here. So would all the past district governors and current district governors please stand up? Thank you so much. I do want to make a shout out to one past district governor because it's got a connection. Rick Benson, when I was president of my club, Rick Benson was my district governor. So to be in this position and heading in the journey I'm in, Rick, I just want to call you out. And by the way, Stephanie, the starfish story, he did it during his year. So I got a starfish then too. So good story. So it is my pleasure to introduce the panel for tonight's evening panel. And I am just enthralled by who we have with us tonight. I will start with Shazmina Khan, a remarkable individual. Has left an indelible mark on the world through her dedication to education, advocacy, and diplomacy. As a Rotary Global Grant Scholar, she is pursuing the Masters of Science in Global Governance and Diplomacy at the University of Oxford. She is in her first year there. Am I correct in stating that? And we talked beforehand, and she was giving me some of the insights that she's received so far in her travels there. Shazmina graduated from Yale College with a major in global affairs and a certificate of human rights right here from Yale Law School. While at Yale, she served as executive director of the Yale International Relations Association and president of the Muslim Students Association, where she tirelessly worked to break down barriers and foster understanding. Shazmina presented a TEDx entitled Western Hypocrisy Towards Women in the Muslim World, exploiting the politicization of the hijab and Western perspectives on women's rights in Iran. Pretty good stuff. Shazmina's journey as a Muslim woman has been shaped by her family's Islamic background. Her commitment to global governance and diplomacy reflects her desire to contribute positively to our interconnected world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shazmina Khan. Fantastic. Okay. Mary Shackleton, Mary Eileen Shackleton, served as District Governor 7230 for the 2020-21 Rotary year. She is a member and past president of the Rotary Club of Metro New York City. She currently serves as the Endowment Major Gifts Advisor for Zone 32. She was appointed by Rotary International President Gordon McAnally as representative to the United Nations in the Rotary Representative Network. She is also District 7230's Council on Legislation representative and will chair the Mid-Northeast Multi-District President-Select Training Seminar later this month in Whippany, New Jersey. Please welcome Mary Shackleton to the stage. Now, I have a very, very detailed introduction of our next guest. I received it from her aide, Marie, I think it was, Maria. And I wanted to read it, but then I said, no way, because I have my own introduction of this individual. We have just spent the last 5 days together. She was up at Northeast Pets. What a joy to have you there. And she imparted such amazing words of wisdom to our incoming presidents. I know they're so jazzed and excited, and some of them are here. And then the past several days here in Connecticut, we've been doing a point-by-point journey of connections to Pittsburgh. And I don't know how that happened. She even met someone this morning from her hometown. I mean, and so I think there's a simpatico synergy here, so we know you'll be back at some point. And Ted Rossi, I know, will find a way to get you back, right? So without saying any more, I just want to say we're so honored to have Stephanie Urchick with us. She is such a humble and beautiful individual. Stephanie, please welcome to the stage.
Well, thank you, Robert, and it's so good to be with the family of Rotary. I will share a couple of ideas with you that I did share with President-elect, so I apologize if you're hearing this for the second time, but then you'll know it again, because repetition is the way we learn things. So people always ask me, how did you get involved in Rotary? Well, very much like most of you did. I was invited to a club. I was working at a state university in Pennsylvania, and a woman walked into my office and she said, "Stephanie, would you like to come to a Rotary meeting?" And I looked at her and said, "What the hell is Rotary?" Because I simply didn't know. Nobody in my family had ever joined a service club, and so Eileen gave me the elevator speech, and when she got to the part about Rotary's internationality, I got very intrigued because growing up, I wanted to be a spy. But that's another story for another evening. So she talked about it, and okay, I'll go to the Rotary Club meeting with you. So I went to a meeting. I went to a second meeting. By the fourth meeting, I was doing the newsletter, and a year and a half later, I was president. But there was something significant about that first Rotary Club for me. When I joined it, I came to realize at the very first meeting that in the club was a past Rotary International president by the name of Chuck Keller. So wasn't I a lucky gal? I had a Rotary godfather during my journey. Because of course, as the president would stand up, he'd say, "Well, we're going to talk about RILA next week, and then the COL." And I'd say, "Chuck, what are they talking about?" And he would lean over and be very patient and share with me what was being talked about. So I tell you that story because I think it's really important for us to remember that as we invite people to come and find out who we are, don't bring them to a club meeting. Take them to a social or take them to a project so they can see what we do and who we are. Because if you take them to a club meeting, they're going to hear all the acronyms and they're going to wonder, what is this group? Are they some kind of cult or something? So my journey into Rotary, that was 33 years ago when I joined. And I'm now in my third club. And where's Dick Mason? Dick Mason was in my Rotary Club, the one that I'm in now, McMurray, PA. Yeah, yay. So along the way, I kept saying yes to everything. People would say, "Do you want to be the club foundation chair?" "Yeah, I'll do that." "Do you want to run for district governor?" "Sure, yeah, I'll do that." "How about you want to be the Rotary Regional Foundation coordinator for the zone?" "I can handle that." "Okay. Do you want to run for director?" "No problem." I just kept saying yes. Because when I was growing up, I had a mantra that was, life is always more exciting on the other side of a yes. Say yes and figure it out. Now, it has to be legal, and it has to be moral, okay? And you have to realize that sometimes it might get you in trouble. I remember the first time I went on a National Immunization Day trip to India. I called my mother the day before we were leaving. I said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to India tomorrow." And she went crazy. "Oh my gosh, how long have you known? Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Mom, I've known for 6 months. But if I told you 6 months ago, you would worry for 6 months. Now you're going to worry for 12 days, and then I'll be home." So you just have to figure out, where it fits and say yes. Because life is more exciting if you say yes. And then figure out all the details. So that's what my Rotary journey has been, simply saying yes. And one of the things that I did say yes to was chairing our strategic planning process. So I was at the beginning of that whole endeavor to create what is now our action plan. So people ask me at PETS, well, how did you know? When did you know you wanted to be president of Rotary? I said 2 weeks before the application was due, because it had never been on my radar screen. I was really happy being a Rotarian and saying yes and doing the things I was doing. But because of my involvement with the action plan, I was able to see how the organization had adopted the action plan, Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. And beautiful things are coming from the corporate level. And then I watched how it's been adopted by the zone level. But where we haven't had as much success is at the club level. But you know what? That's where Rotary happens, where you are. It doesn't happen where I sit in Evanston. It happens where you are. So we really need to work together to make sure clubs know what it is, why it is, and how to use it. So, you know, the what you'll hear about, because there are going to be action plan champions, and we have coordinators, and your district governors will be sharing information. The why is simply because Rotary finally took a look at itself and said, we have a bad trend. We're going this way. We're not doing this. And we don't want to end up like JCs. We don't want to end up like other organizations that are having membership issues. What we do is magic. And we want to make sure that we're around for a long time. I love Rotary just like you do. I don't want it to go away. When I think I said this at PETS, when I look in the mirror, I know I don't have 30 years to do Rotary. But I see a lot of faces here that do. All right? That makes me happy, because I want our organization to continue. So that's the why. That's the why. And then the how is what you will hear also from your leaders, your governors, and other folks. The thing you need to remember is the action plan is not a mandate. It's not Rotary telling us what to do. It's a tool. It's a tool for us to take with our clubs and do an assessment. How are we doing in these 4 areas? And can we get better? You know, I come from the world of education, where we always talk about continuous improvement. You can be really good at something, but you can get better. We can always get better. So that's what the action plan is about. And I thought, this is where we are as an organization. And I think leadership is about being the right person at the right time. And I thought, you know what, this is the right time. So that's how I sent that application in 2 weeks before it was due, and that's why I'm here, sitting on stage as your president-elect.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Well, Stephanie, let me transition to another question, because we're here because this evening is titled Charting Peace, an evening with you and our guests. And it would be great for us to start off with your perspective and overview of Rotary International's current peace initiative, so that we can kind of set the context for tonight's conversation.
Well, Robert, there are so many. Well, let me start a different way. Everything we do in Rotary has an underlying foundation of peace building. Everything. When we take clean water into a family's home, we're creating peace. Christine said it. When we send a student out on youth exchange, we're creating peace, one student at a time. We have so many ways, but let me talk about some of the major things that we're known for. Certainly our Rotary Peace Centers is one of the premier programs of the Rotary Foundation. We have 6 peace centers around the world, and we have graduated over 1,800 people from these centers. They learn peace and conflict resolution. Then they take that back into their area, and they use it with NGOs or in their career, in their profession, to work on peace and conflict resolution. You know, I have a personal story about that. When I was in Africa, I encountered a child soldier with a gun aimed at me. It's a long story, and it's tell you another time, but when I was a regional foundation coordinator, my job was to get a Peace Fellow to come and speak to our institute. So when I contacted RI, they said, yes, we have a young man who will come. Well, when I met him, I found out he was from Lagos, Nigeria. And I said, oh, which Peace Center? He went to Chula. And I said, oh, what are you working on? He said, well, I'm a police officer, and I am working on child soldiering. So that was very personal for me. So these Peace Fellows are doing amazing things around the world. And we are opening a 7th center in the Middle East. We have just signed a memo of understanding with Bahçeşehir University in Turkey. So in February of 2025, we are holding a presidential peace symposium and celebration of the opening of the center. So all of the 1,800 Peace Fellows will be invited to attend if they can get there. Directors, trustees, major donors, Rotarians from around the world who are interested in what we're doing are all invited to come. So if that is of interest to you, it's February 20th to the 22nd in Istanbul, Turkey. So that's one program. Yes. A second program that we developed with the Institute for Economics and Peace. And it's an online program called Positive Peace Activator. And everybody in this room can become a positive peace activator in your community. It's an online program. It takes about 6 hours to go through the 6 different modules. And you receive a certificate from the Rotary Learning Center and the IEP, signifying that you're a positive peace activator. So I hope you'll take a look at that and see if that's something that you can bring to your community. We also have something called Rotary Action Groups. Rotary Action Groups are individuals from around the world who are experts in a special area, and we have Rotary Action Groups for Peace. The major Rotary Action Group was founded by a man here in the United States by the name of Al Jubitz. The current chair of that is Michael Hayes. Last week, I attended an online chartering of the Rotary Action Group for Peace, India. 2 weeks prior to that, I joined an online program for the chartering of the Rotary Action Group, Italy. So it's a growing movement for people who are organized as an action group, and what they do is work with clubs. That's why they exist. They help clubs look for partners to do peace projects. They help clubs figure out how to find funding if they need that. So they're a major resource to all of us if we have an interest in generating projects for peace. And that group also tracks a project that's so important to me. It's the Peace Pole Project, which is a very simple thing that any Rotary Club can do. If you have 6 members, you can do it. If you have 600 members, you can do it. And it's finding a location in your community, working with your township, your municipality, your school district, and you actually erect a visible pole that says, "May peace prevail on earth," in the languages of your community. It's around the pole. And the new ones have QR codes, so people who don't know about Rotary can find out more about that. But what I love most about that project is that the Rotary Club can then say to other groups in the community, use this location for anything that you do that engenders community, peace, harmony, unity. The last installation that I was involved in was in Western Pennsylvania, and that Rotary Club was inviting the local churches to do a choir concert, to come and sing. Each choir was singing 3 songs, and the whole community was coming out that Sunday evening to sit and listen to choirs sing. So there are all kinds of ways that clubs can do that, and they're not expensive. Many, many vendors make them, or if you have a local vocational technical school, students can make it. And I've seen them made out of everything, wood, aluminum, all kinds of things, but it's a very positive way. And the final thing, I'm going to shut up because I know we have other panelists. We have in Rotary a very, very important tool that we can use to promote peace, and it's our four-way test. That four-way test is a set of 4 brilliant sentences that when we use them to focus our thoughts and our words and our actions through that four-way test, we really are creating a peaceful environment. I always say to clubs, wouldn't it be a more peaceful world if everyone lived the four-way test instead of just reciting it? So we have many tools. There are more that I could talk about, but those are the major ones that come to mind, Robert.
That's fantastic, Stephanie. I love the choir concert. And I'm just a quick question. I mean, when that happened, was the choir there, were they communicating with a peace-focused initiative in their singing, or was it focused on just being in the moment, being in the space?
It was focused on cultural understanding.
There you go.
Because it was a Baptist choir, it was a Russian Orthodox choir, it was a Polish Catholic Church choir, so it was cultural understanding.
That's fantastic, and I'm going to play off of that in a bit, but let's jump over to Shazmina. Thrilled you're here, Shazmina, and you all don't know this, but she just flew in just a few days ago from the UK to join us, and she made a special decision when she was asked by Colin Gershon to join us here tonight. So we're really happy you've made that adjustment in your schedule. Thank you so much. Given your extensive involvement in governance and diplomacy and your work on an international level through your program in Oxford, could you share your insights on the global perception of Rotary on a global basis in terms of, as you sit there in Oxford, as you do your work, what is the perception of Rotary related to what you do, and from a peace perspective, from a diplomacy perspective? What are you seeing out there in the world from your seat as you go through and matriculate through this program?
Is this thing working? Yeah, it is. Well, hello everyone. My name is Shazmina. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction that you gave earlier. I also want to start off, because I don't know if I'll have time to say this at the end, just saying my thanks to a lot of the people in the room that came up to me and introduced themselves to me today. I think it's always, I'm only 23, so it's daunting to walk into a room full of adults and people who have done such phenomenal things in their lives, and just kind of walk in and be like, hi, I'm Shazmina, I'm getting my master's. So thank you for making me feel so welcome. But I've always felt this way, since I've joined the Rotary community. And then, of course, a huge thank you to Colin, who is my host here in this district. He has dealt with me painstakingly throughout the entire process of me getting the scholarship and then all the paperwork after that, and even follows up with me from time to time while I'm at Oxford. So I'm very grateful for him and for his guidance and mentorship while I've graduated from Yale, and now I'm doing my master's in the UK. To your question, that's a great question, the perception of Rotary. I think that one thing I will say, and I think one thing I've asked every single person here that I have met tonight is, if you spoke to me, I'm very in awe of people like you all Rotarians who continue to stay so engaged with Rotary. Some of you guys have been here for over a decade, decades, whatever it might be. And the question I think that I always ask is, like, somebody who's young, and I think my generation is one that also doesn't see value in, I guess, investing in communities for extended period of time. We kind of invest and then we move on and then we keep moving forward. It's kind of the fast-paced generation that I think I'm a part of. So I'm always in awe when I see people who are really committed not to a cause but to a community. So I asked all of you that I spoke to, I was like, what's keeping you invested in Rotary? Like, why are you here right now? You could be in a million different places probably with a million other different people, but why here? Why Rotary? Why this community? And I think this plays into Rotary's public perception. So whenever I tell people that I'm a Rotary Global Grant Scholar, one, everybody knows what Rotary International is. Your guys' work precedes you. The impact that Rotary has had in, from the most developed to the least developed countries in the world is, I think, very apparent. And Rotary definitely holds brand recognition. But I think beyond that, when people think about Rotary, they think about, the number one word that comes to my mind is like investment. So it's people who are very invested in not only the causes they're working for, but the people that they're working with. So I was just saying this earlier tonight. I was, right before I left the UK, I was with my host in Oxford, my Rotary host in Oxford. We had like a 3.5-hour lunch. And honestly, every time I meet with her, her name is Tessa, what I hear about are her stories during her time at Rotary. Why she joined, who she's met through being involved in Rotary, the people she's worked with, and why she continues to show up to all of the club meetings, why she continues to host scholars from across the world, why it is that she continues to just, I guess, show up for the community. Even though, and I don't necessarily know if she's on like a Rotary paycheck or anything, she's just kind of there because she wants to be. So I think that's one thing I will say is that I think in a time especially where there's so much little hope in global institutions, especially nonprofits, you really need groups like Rotary where the people are going to stick around no matter what to kind of represent what that organization is all about. And that's what I think about when I think about Rotary. That's what I think about when I think about why I'd want to be involved in Rotary 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when I'm done with the Global Grant Scholarship, whatever it might be. So that's one thing I would say is that I think, forget about like diplomacy and like, policy and things like that. Like, what does Rotary mean on a personal level to people, Because at the end of the day, that's why people will stay involved and care about it as an organization. But a bit on the professional note as well, and I had such a lovely talk earlier with Mary, who was sitting at the table, talking about a million different things, but I think that groups like Rotary are really incredibly important, especially now, and I think it's really fitting that the topic for tonight is, peace and resolution and, conflict, because I think those are words that come to my mind when we think about what we're seeing happening in the world right now, whether it be in the States, outside of the U.S. And I almost think it's a hard time for, Stephanie to be coming into a presidency because you're going to have to make, I think as a group, a lot of important decisions, sometimes controversial decisions, statements that will, no matter what you say or how you say it, somebody's not going to like what you're saying, But I think that's why it's so important for, I think, young people like myself to also be getting involved in the folds of Rotary, because it's mentorship in a lot of ways. It's learning from you all in the room, how do we navigate times like this in the world so that when we're in positions, my generation, positions of leadership like you all, we have people whose shoulders we kind of will be able to stand on when it comes to this sort of stuff. But that also means that everybody in this room has such an important responsibility, because that means that you all, as the governors and district heads and strategy advisors and leaders, really have to be making, I guess, like the decisions, the hard decisions, or the hard statements, or the hard workshopping, whatever it might be, that I think will really represent the legacy of this organization, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when we're in a different state of the world. So that's what I think about Rotary in terms of its role in the global community. Is I think it's there to represent the people that are a part of it, but it's also there to make a step towards problem solving, and oftentimes you don't know what the right solution is, but it has to start somewhere. And I think that's what I think about when I think about Rotary and its mission when it comes to peacemaking. You don't need to have the right answer. I don't think many people have the right answer with what to do in the world right now. You just need to think about something. Can we do something? Can we start somewhere? And I just want you to know that people my age are looking up to you guys when we think about it. So where there's a lot of leaders failing the world, I think there's a lot of people that are also not, and I'm really proud to be a part of Rotary for that reason.
Just mean that, yeah, absolutely. I loved what you said around words and language. I think that is so spot on. Words matter. And so, yeah, we have to be careful about what we say, how we say it. The question I have for you, when you talk about problem solving, is in what you see in your travels thus far, and in your research, and your perspective of the globe, particularly because of your background, your family background, and what would you say is like the biggest issue from your perspective that needs to be solved? What's the thing, that thing from your perspective, that one thing that if it were to be able to be addressed would be a major impactor on society?
No softballs here, definitely.
No.
The biggest issue. I guess it's not a tangible thing, what I'm going to say. It's not like something like climate change or, like terrorism, whatever it might be. I would say I think the biggest issue that we encounter from like the smallest scale to like, let's say like in our families, to like the largest scale of like negotiations and like, the West Wing or whatever it might be. I think it's really an inability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And, I say this right now because just a couple of weeks ago, and I know that you know this because we were talking, but while I was at Oxford, since I was 10 years old, it was a dream of mine to speak at the Oxford Union in a debate, and I was so lucky and honored to be able to speak in one in the beginning of February. And the topic for that debate that I spoke in was, "This House has no confidence in the United Nations." And we don't get to choose which side we debate on, so I was assigned to argue that we do have confidence in the United Nations. And I remember when I got that topic, I called my dad, because my dad was the one I grew up watching Oxford Union debates and speeches with. And I was like, they gave me the really hard side, like it's so easy right now to have no confidence in the UN, like that's definitely the easier winning side to argue. And I remember even he said to me, he was like, yeah, like that might be the case right now, but it'll be a really useful exercise for you to have to argue something you might not necessarily fully believe in this moment in time. And after I gave that, it was funny, after I gave that speech, I was completely convinced that my side was the winning side. I was like, no, I completely believe my side now. I never could have been on the other side when nobody knew that before I was assigned. I actually wanted to sit on the other side of the aisle. But that just goes to my point of, I think that it's really, really hard, I think, and like even in conversations, like I have a younger sister, so whenever we get into arguments, my mom's always like, well, think about how she might be feeling. I was like, why would I think about how she's feeling? Like, I care about what I'm feeling, right? But I think that is genuinely our biggest issue, is we have a really, really hard time, especially, I think, in situations where we, as humans, as communities, as societies, feel aggressed upon, to be able to see the other side. To be able to see why somebody might be doing what they're doing, what, historical memory they have, or legacy, or ancestry, whatever it might be, that leads them to make the actions that they do. And I think because of that, one, there's a lot of turbulence in the world because of that, but I also think more than that, it's for that reason that we're not able to progress in any way either. Because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to like have any nuance in your argument, if you're not willing to have, if it's really just your way or the highway, or it's only your side of the aisle and nobody else's, you can't really move the needle anywhere. And I think that's why we are at a standstill, and I think a lot of conflicts in the world, but even like small conflicts in our personal lives, in our professional lives, whatever it might be. So it's not as clear-cut of an answer, but I think that's the biggest thing that we need to work on. And I don't have the answer for how you do it, but I think we would be a lot better off if we would just sometimes try to see why somebody might feel or act or behave the way that they are, and put ourselves in that situation and see if maybe we would do the same.
That's great. Thank you. That's fantastic. And a lot of what you're talking about is listening. And that's a tough thing to do sometimes. So thank you for that. You made a good segue because you were talking about the United Nations, and we happen to have.
Yes.
So thank you for that. That was a very good cue up. And so, Mary, would love to hear your comments on where Rotary is in relation to the UN, maybe a little history about Rotary and the UN, and then where we are now with the UN, and what kind of work is happening, what's the future look like, and what's the kind of overall scope of our connection there.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. As Robert said in my introduction, I was a 2021 district governor. Well, where are you? Hey, fellow classmate. And so much of what I'm going to say tonight is reflective of the pandemic that we've just come through. So I was trying to figure out a hook, a way to get a district conference weekend going totally virtually. And I did some reading up, talked with the many folks in District 7230 who've been involved with the UN, who have worked at the UN, and together we came up with this idea of 75 years of Rotary and the United Nations. And I learned so much during that process that now I'm here as one of the team working with Rotarians and UN staff to help build and continue this relationship that has been so impacted by the pandemic. So a little bit about the team. We're a global team. Our dean is Judith Dement, a proud citizen of the United Kingdom. She represents us with the Commonwealth, and she's our dean. Past General Secretary Ed Fuda is the primary New York representative. And we're trying to actually figure out the next steps of this relationship. But let me take a little bit back. We're going to go back to the future. How many of you know that Rotary was heavily involved in the development of the United Nations? In fact, at the 1945 San Francisco conference that actually formed the United Nations, there were Rotarians in 29 of the delegations, either as delegates or as advisors or as delegates and advisors. The United States itself had 11 advisors who were Rotarians. They were appointed to the U.S. delegation to help consult with the delegates. Rotary itself was heavily involved in publishing documentation that led up to the United Nations, including the Dunbarton conferences. So there was a very rich history. The UNESCO, the United Nations Educational Social Organization, was actually founded out of a conference that was held in 1943 in the Rotary Club of London, where they talked about cultural and educational exchanges internationally. So that's our history. Move it forward to the present. Rotary is partnering with so many of the different UN constituent organizations, as we all know from the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF are very involved in that. A more recent development, I think one of Rotary's premier focuses and real efforts to outreach is with the COP series of conferences. We were at COP 27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and we were just at COP 28 in Abu Dhabi. So we have a continuing legacy with the United Nations. Specifically about our role locally, because we've been kind of lucky, those of us here in the Northeast Corridor of the United States. We had a long series of Rotary Days at the United Nations. It coincided with some important Rotary meetings, so it just made sense. I don't think there's ever going to be that 1,000, 1,200 people gathering in New York in the UN headquarters. That really changed with the pandemic. But I think we can take it to that next level and make it something even better. As Rotarians in this local area, wouldn't it be great if you had an opportunity to network with senior UN staff members and officials and ambassadors? Have them come to your programs. Wouldn't it be great if you had programming about Rotary's rich history with the United Nations that you could present to your clubs? What if you were able to tap in to a speakers bureau that the United Nations already maintains? These are some of the things that if we take this next step, I think would maybe even be more rich and more impactful and actually help us further our relationship with the United Nations one-on-one and in small groups. So I think that's a really exciting thing about what this current representative network team is doing. The next Rotary Day will be in Paris at UNESCO. We're going to be speaking to a breakout session at the Singapore Convention. I'm hoping to encourage each and every one of you to keep your eyes out for upcoming developments. If you have ideas, if you have suggestions, if you'd like to be part of building this team, I would so love to hear from you. Reach out to me. I think there are some things that we didn't even imagine that we could do. Video programming, video conferences, specialized tours, maybe even getting to go to the smaller constituent bodies of the UN in New York, such as UNICEF, having a lot more opportunity to interact and have panels with UN officials. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yes. Mary, I want to ask you a question. Can you talk about the conversation? Because I love what you're saying, but it would be really wonderful to kind of get a sense of an example or some scope of what are you talking about? What's happening inside the walls of those convenes? It's fascinating.
Well, I think that we are really, really focused on, I think, 2 or 3 key areas. We're really involved with UNICEF and the continuing effort to end polio, eradicate polio. I think that's a really big area of focus. We also are really involved with UN Women and International Women's Day. That's been also a big focus. Next year, I would like to have special programming during the actual start of the GA, the General Assembly, and if we could really have an event or two surrounding that some of you here could come and join and be a part of. Also, I would love to actually talk with your clubs. If you have things that you would like us to be bringing forward to the UN, if you have concerns or issues or things that you think we should follow up on, I think that the important thing, and I think the next iteration of the representative network is to be a voice for each and every Rotary member, both Rotaractors and senior Rotarians. I think another thing that we're really getting involved with is environmental sustainability. I think that's another big focus. The Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group has been really involved with the effort and the publicity that has attended the COP 27 and 28 experience. We had 30 Rotaractors there on behalf of Rotary. They had wonderful attendance at some of the side sessions that Rotary did. We have a small but growing group of representatives here. If you have ideas or thoughts about who might be a good member of the representative network, I would be happy to take them forward to Ed Fuda, our Maine representative. Does that help?
That's great. That's fantastic.
And you know, Robert, let me add to what Mary
Please,
said. You
please.
were there in Orlando
That's
during
right.
International Assembly. We signed a special memo of understanding with the United Nations Environmental Program because of our new area of focus, all right, which is a very important area in terms of attracting new Rotarians, especially new generations and Rotaractors who have such a focus on protecting our environment. So that was a major accomplishment and worth celebrating that we now have a partnership there. And we will be at COP29, which will be in Azerbaijan. So I know that's a far distance, but keep in mind that we have special representatives like Mary who will be there to help talk about Rotary's commitment, especially with our area of focus in the environment, and we're part of that conversation. So,
And great segue over to that through back to our initiatives within Rotary. One of your big ideas for this coming year, which I'm personally very excited about, is positive peace.
mm-hmm.
Can you talk about, from the action plan perspective, what does positive peace mean to you? What can we do within the Rotary community to begin putting peace into action in our districts, where together we can then make a grand impact?
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier the Rotary Action Groups, and their primary focus is to help clubs and districts look for partners to do projects in peace to increase our impact, which is our #1 priority. You know, when you think back, those of us who have been in Rotary a long time, remember when we had matching grants? They were a small amount of money that would help us, you know, maybe put in a well or do something. And then we went to global grants, which are bigger, all right? But now we have programs of scale, which are huge, $2 million grants that help us really attack a big issue and have a big impact. Think about it, helping to eradicate malaria from an entire country, helping to erase cervical cancer from an entire country. I mean, these are really impactful projects that we get involved in. So, you know, clubs can become involved in those grants. I know Rick Benson is waiting for an answer, and you know, if that happens, all of you here will be able to jump into that program and help with that. So the Rotary Action Groups are certainly a way, and it comes from impact. But then when you talk about reach, and you know, you talk about engagement, reach is our effort with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And we have to remember that people are attracted to Rotary for different reasons. So those clubs and districts that promote activities that generate peace, like the Peace Pole Project, like the Peace Activator online program, any of those, are going to be attractive to people who want to be part of that movement, who want to say, yes, I want to create a more peaceful world. I want to help look at human interaction and help people figure out how to look at the other side. That's reach. And then engagement is exactly that. It's, you know, doing things that help people get involved, and that helps our retention. So when your club looks at, you know, maybe putting in installing a peace pole, and you get all of your members out to that location, they become part of that project. They have ownership of that project, and that's, you know, promoting peace in a positive way, and it's helping our retention. Okay? And the final one is our ability to adapt and do things differently. It's about being flexible. And so as we think about different ways that we can each, or as a club or as a district, have an impact on positive peace, that's where we can think about innovation and new ways to look at it. From my perspective, everything we do has to have a foundation of peace. How do you go into a community and provide fresh water if there's conflict, if there's a war going on? How do you go into a family area or a school district and try to talk about, interventions for mental health or for substance abuse when there is domestic violence. How do you do those things? We have to have peace in all of our areas of focus. Education, disease treatment, all of them require peace as a foundation. And we think about it, our organization is built on a foundation of world understanding and peace. That's what we're about. Rotary is a peace-building organization. So anything that we can think about, dream about, create magic in, falls from the action plan.
Stephanie, that's fantastic. The magic of Rotary, when it was revealed down in Orlando, really impacted me in a huge way because, and you talked about your story about the water filter and the little boy seeing what that magic of that clean water coming out from dirty water, which we've all seen on the video if we weren't there. But when you first revealed your peace project on a Zoom call with all the DGEs, I couldn't have been more thrilled because many in this room who've been working with me know that has always been my core kind of thread of a vision for the year ahead. And we've been watching for years in this world how we've been so divided. I mean, whether it's the unhinged international world, whether it's the local issues we're dealing with, mass shootings or fentanyl, drug abuse, or the lack of kindness, the lack of, or the selfishness of individuals and people in communities and in the world. This is stuff we have to deal with actively. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to how we communicate, how we embrace one another. And I've been in the performing arts world, as we've talked about, for my entire career. And so as I've been thinking about this, and I'm now talking to the members of our District 7980, I've always felt that the arts have had an intrinsic value in impacting people to their soul, to the core. And whether it's music, whether it's a piece of popular music like John Lennon, or the spoken word in theater, or a piece of visual art, the communication that each individual could receive from that, the expression, the cultural expression, can be pretty powerful. And it opens the idea of dialogue and compassion and empathy. And so we've talked about this, but I want to share with everyone here that for our district, we're going to embark on an opus for peace. Opus for peace, creating harmony, inspiring wellness, and embracing diversity through the fusion of the arts. That is going to be the year we embark on with Stephanie. It's a different approach. It doesn't mean that anything will change, but it gives us a perspective of driving forward. And I know John Waller's not here, but John Waller, who's the chair of our Peace Committee, and I don't think Dennis Wong is here tonight, is he? Is Dennis here?
I didn't see Dennis.
I didn't see him. Dennis and John are chairs of our Peace Committee, and John is president of the Connecticut Lyric Opera. He's from Mystic, and they're doing Amistad the Opera coming up this November. And it's going to be performing at the Gard Arts Center up at the Bushnell, and we're hoping to get finalization with down here at the Schubert Theater here in New Haven. And Rotary's going to be involved in that. And I want to read the mission that the committee has come up with because I think it's important to hear. To create an environment where dialogue, empathy, and artistic expression converge to heal divides, celebrate diversity, and build a more harmonious world, we aim to transform the concept of peace from an abstract ideal into a tangible reality, fostering a culture of peace and reconciliation that extends far beyond our Rotary community. So that's where we're going to approach things. And the role of cultural arts in peace building can have a profound impact because it allows people to, as we've heard from Shazmina and each person on the panel today, that it's all about embracing communication and unifying towards a common idea. And that means listening. And when we listen together to a piece of art, or we look at a piece of art, there's something that transforms us and it opens a conversation. And if that's what it does, if it simply does that, then that's powerful. So this is a call to action. We're inviting cultural institutions from around the state to join us in this effort. A call to action has gone out to every one of them, this Opus for Peace. And what it is also, Stephanie, is it's a media opportunity. It's a public image opportunity. It's an opportunity to elevate our story, and to elevate our story in a way that's powerful, and then we turn our clubs on it. And this is where it gets fun, because every club in our district, every club in the community can find their own unique creativeness to come up with something that outside of the box is big and audacious and bold around the idea of creating change through the fusion of the arts and peace. And what that looks like, we're going to find out. This is a real opportunity for us to discover a new way of attacking an issue that has got so many sides to it, as we've all talked about, but hasn't had its focal point. So I just wanted to share that, and because this conversation we've had has been so invaluable for us to hear from your perspective on peace. And I wanted you to hear it, because I wanted you to understand
fantastic, yeah.
where we're coming from. And I'll stop there from our district's perspective as we head forward. I'd like to open it up to questions in the audience. Go ahead, Christine Burns.
Hi, I'm loud, so it's okay. So I have a question. I'm from Holyoke, Massachusetts, and Holyoke is the second poorest community in the Commonwealth. That's a fact. Recently, we had an incidence of gun violence where gang gun violence killed an unborn child through the wall of a city bus. So when I look at my 106-year-old Rotary Club, how can I get them the message that international peace is something we need to so focus on when we have such a poor community and so much need locally? That is something that I struggle with every day, and in trying to guide my own club's leaders, and for those of us in Western Mass, we are not an affluent area by any means. So.
Well, let me start by just saying that your question brings back what I heard 3 days ago when I heard Chris Singleton. Is that his name?
Chris
speak.
Singleton.
He talked about how there's a story behind every stance. And when you listen, which is what we have to get better at, when you listen to the story behind someone's stance, then you have a better, his mother, for those who don't know, his mother was killed in the church basement during the Bible study.
In Charleston.
Yeah, so it was very personal for him. And he talked about how he has an abhorrence for guns, yet he has his best friend who has childhood memories of going hunting with his father, and to this day still goes and does that as an activity for bonding. So there's a stance behind every story. So that's what came to mind when you asked the question. Let me stop there, and Mary's got her hand up.
Well, I'm chopping at the bit for this one.
Okay.
Have you heard of the city of Yonkers, New York?
Of course.
Here's kind of the flip side of a global grant. The city of Yonkers also has terrible issues of poverty, food insecurity, gun violence, all those things that many communities are experiencing. They decided to flip a global grant around and actually rebuild basketball courts and a peace program, an anti-bullying program around them using a global grant. And Celeste and Rick, I'll shout out to you. One of the things you can do with a global grant is support a project right in your own community and get people from around the Rotary world to be involved in your community. And that in and of itself will help build peace. That's at least a suggestion to think about.
Great.
November 25th of this year was the United Nations Day of No Against Violence Against Women, right? But it's not just one day. So 16 days after that are 16 days of action, right? So what I would love to see is Rotary clubs internationally getting involved in this type of a project as well. And it doesn't have to be large clubs doing amazing things that raising lots of funds or being out there changing politics. It can be small issues like education, providing water, providing good access to services for women as well. So is there a possibility, especially Mary, you're involved with the United Nations, but also from the perspective of Rotary International, is this something that we could partner together and work, multiplying our efforts that way? Thank you.
Well, I think your idea is a fabulous one, and I'll answer it by asking a question. Who's Rotary? Who is Rotary? Here we are. So the answer to your question is, what we need to do is to share that idea in a variety of ways so that clubs and districts and zones around the world buy into it and start to do it. There is no way that we can, at Rotary International, coordinate something like that at this time, all right? But we, as Rotarians where we are, can make that difference by sharing that information. We can put it on Rotary Showcase, we can use social media, we can send governor-elects to IA and they meet each other from around the world. That's what we need to do. We need to get clubs and districts and zones excited and active as peace builders, and we could do those kinds of things. We can't wait for... Rotary International is a building in Evanston on Sherman Avenue. And it exists, it has people that are there to help us. They help us in our clubs, in our districts, they help us. But you have to remember that we're a dues-driven organization. And for 30 years, we've been getting less and less dues coming into the organization. So to expect Rotary to have the resources to create some kind of arm now that, can take us in different, won't happen until we turn the ship around. But that doesn't mean that we can't. We are Rotary, so we're the ones that have to do that promotion, get people excited, get people like Mary on board and say, here's something that we need our representative network to share that information. That's for us to do.
And Marty, would you stand up? This is Marty Schulman, who happens to be the Zone 32 Empowering Women and Girls Ambassador. He's another person that you should get to know and could help with such a project. So this is what we're doing in this room, networking. So please reach out to Marty.
I would say we've identified ourselves. We're Rotarians, all of us here. Perhaps we need to look inward, because it's one thing to talk the talk, another to walk the walk.
Amen.
Bingo.
Where is our organization relative to the gender mix of North America in our zone? We're nowhere near 50% or 52% of women. By increasing membership, actually by empowering women within Rotary, within our organization, we could touch on all 4 of the priorities of the action plan. Expanding our reach, increasing our impact, engaging our members, and adapting. And the 3 major efforts of Rotary: membership, our foundation, and our service, can all be positively impacted by promoting women as leaders within the organization and increasing the amount of women that are leaders in our group. It's about time. It is about time.
Thank you, Marty. Other questions from the floor? Ron Webb.
Hi, everyone. I'm a man of few words, but I did want to say something about Shamina. First of all, I'm very proud of her as being a representative of District 7980. Colin and I had the benefit of watching a video of her presentation in the UK. If there's anybody in the group that wants to see that, please reach out to either one of us. But she really is an excellent example of what comes out of our area and our area of focus. I do have a question for Stephanie, which is really two parts, but hopefully merge it in such a way you can answer it with one answer.
Okay.
In our district, there's some degree of confusion between what's a global grant and what is a Rotary fellowship. And each of them are equally important and they serve a very important role. I would hope that you could spend a moment to kind of differentiate between the two.
Sure.
But in conjunction with that, I had a second part to my question about this. But I think it's most important that we address that issue together, because I think it's very critical to the district to realize how important it is that our gifts to the district come back in such acrimonious ways. So thank you very much.
Okay. So your first question, Ron, is the difference between a Rotary Global Scholar and what you refer to as a Rotary Peace Fellow is what you're really referring to. All right, so.
Yes, I think that many times we look at the fact that our district is very good at doing 2 global scholarships a year. And so we know there's $30,000 scholarships, and we're very excited about being able to give that money away.
Right.
And we do that as part of our DDF funds. But then when we talk about the fact that by the 15th of May, we'd like everybody in the group to recommend somebody for a fellowship, that becomes a little bit more confusing because we don't understand exactly how that works and how it benefits us. And
Right.
the second part of the question was that within the past couple of days, there was an announcement through Rotary of the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Center at George Mason University. I hope that you can speak a little bit to that and how that might impact on the fellowships going forward. So with that, I will stop.
Okay, let me start with that last part. I don't have a clue. I've been on the road since that happened. So I can't add anything to what you've seen other than what's been on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'll find out more when I'm back in Evanston this week. And that's just a recent development, so I think a lot of that will develop as it happens. Our Rotary Peace Fellows is a separate program from the Global Scholars. It is a program that comes from our Rotary Foundation, and there is a separate application process. We select up to 60 or 70, depending on the year, folks from around the world who are interested in going to one of our peace centers. There are only 7 choices of where they could go to study specifically peace and conflict resolution. They earn a master's degree in that discipline, or if they go to Makarara in Africa, they earn a certificate in peace and conflict resolution. That is a separate program from the Global Scholars, who, by nature of the program, can select the institutions where they go. So it is a different program. It is very competitive. The Global Scholar program is as well, but the Peace Scholarship program is unbelievably selective, very selective program. But that is a completely fully paid experience, and as I mentioned, we have 1,800 of those graduates now around the world who are working in peace. That's the difference.
Great. We probably have time for a couple more. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So, Shazmena, we know that this is only the beginning of your journey professionally. So 2 questions. One is, what made you choose Oxford? And what do you see as your next step? Knowing it's not the whole mountain, it's the next hill. So what do you see in your immediate future as you carry your work forward?
My dinner prepared me for this question. A lot of people have been asking me these days, where do you see yourself 10, 15 years from now? I don't know why. It's a question you get in your early 20s, I guess. So why I chose Oxford? There's a lot of reasons. I mean, I could take out a box or a list of reasons, but I think the number one reason I would say is I think Yale was great. It was phenomenal. If anybody's an alumni here or affiliated with the university, I'd give it a 100 out of 10. You know, I loved my time there. The one thing I will say though is, and I think this is just how American education works just generally, is that if you are, my major at Yale was global affairs, it's very US-centric. Every class you're in, like even if you have like your practitioner or your professor is like a diplomat from, XYZ country, a lot of what they are telling you comes from a very U.S. point of view. So, and that's helpful for me when I want to go into U.S. foreign policy, but it's also not so helpful because the issue right now with foreign policy is that we only look at it from an American standpoint, and I think that is the problem. So that is why I applied to Oxford, because one, the UK in many ways in terms of its caliber of education is very similar, but two, I had been told by a lot of my professors here at Yale and also just some family mentors of mine that have also studied abroad in the UK, that Oxford is a place where, despite being a European, or Anglo-Saxon, institution, its professors and the way that they teach comes from a point of view that's a bit more global. So the way that they teach policy, the way that they teach policy making, diplomacy, the art of negotiation is a bit less focused on where they are geographically in the world. And that also just has to do historically with how intertwined the UK has been with, let's say, the Near East, the Orient part of the world, South Asia. So that is why I applied to Oxford, because I think it would give me, and it has given me, I think, a new perspective on how I think about policy, domestic and foreign policy. So that's my one answer, aside from the fact that it's just a very cool place to be. So I'm very privileged to be able to be there. People always ask me, do you like Yale better or Oxford? I was like, don't ask me that question. I'm not going to answer that. They're both,
Especially not in New Haven.
they're both great in their own ways. And then the second part is, I guess, where do I see myself going now? They sat me at the right table because I was right next to somebody who's been in law, been practicing in the legal profession for a while. I would like to see myself go to law school after my master's. So hopefully that is where I will be for the next 3 years after this. And after that, I think the ultimate goal is I would really like to get involved in government in some capacity. So I don't think I intend, at least right now, to be a lawyer forever. I just think the skills that you get from having a law degree can be very useful in the realm of policymaking, and that's at least what I've been told from the people I've met. And I think that is something that would just help me, especially as I think the world of policy is only becoming increasingly harder to understand, and the barrier to entry is also just becoming higher. But that is where I'd like to see myself, whether that be in the United Nations one day, whether that be, in a US cabinet somewhere, a federal agency. That I have yet to figure out. I have time, I think, to figure that out. But that is the ultimate goal, is to be able to make some impact policy-wise. I think somebody mentioned over here, I think you, when you asked your question, like, we focus so much on the international that sometimes we forget about the local, right? And I do think that impact works in, in ripples. Is like you have a local impact and then it ripples out to like a global international one. So the hope is to one day be able to make something more local within the United States, that sort of impact, but then the ultimate dream is to be able to also impact the lives of, I think, communities that I consider home outside of the United States as well. I've grown up in the US my entire life. I feel very American. My family has been settled here longer than they've ever been anywhere abroad. But at the end of the day, I do, because of my background, have such an affinity to places outside of the US. And I think it would really be a miss in my lifetime to not be able to impact those communities, especially because in some ways they need a lot more than people right here within our own borders do. So that's the short answer, but I'm still figuring it out. It's unraveling as I go.
Yale has a great law school, right?
Keep her here.
Yeah, I do. If you know anybody on the admissions committee, let me know.
Well, it's 9 o'clock. We promised to keep this close to 9 as we could. I do want to kind of wrap up by going back to something you said, Stephanie, at the beginning, which is it all starts with peace. We can't move forward with different aspects of our society without having a peaceful community to deal with getting everyone clean water, to deal with bringing conflict together in a place where we can have a conversation. You've got to have peace, and I think this has been an invigorating conversation. Are there any final words that you would like to impart before we close the door on tonight?
Well, maybe just a reminder, people often say, well, why are you focused on, peace initiatives, positive peace? Rotary's never going to stop war. Of course we're not. But you mentioned it earlier. It's very much like the starfish story. Every little thing we do, every person we touch, every community we touch, every nation we can touch has an impact. And it's a way for people to think differently, to stop for a moment. As Shamina said, stop and think, what is that perspective? What are they thinking about? You know, and the starfish story, for those, everybody here knows it. The little boy sees starfish that wash up on the beach. And so he leans over to pick one up and throw it back. And a man sees him and says, "Young man, what are you doing? You're never going to save all these starfish. Look, there are thousands of them." And the little boy picks one up and says, "But I'm saving this one." And that's my same perspective for a positive peace. Every student we send out, every new member we bring into our club, every time we are somewhere promoting peace, that's one more message that we're giving to the world that we are about peace building.
I want to thank our three panelists, Shazmina Khan, Mary Shackleton, Rotary International President-elect Stephanie Urchick. Thank you so much.